on this computer. Here we go. So thank you for joining. Yeah, so I was saying, like, this is an experiment. It's the first time I'm doing this, but I thought that in the times that we are living right now, and I think it would be interesting to have a space where we can, among Belgians, like, talk about all of what's happening in the crypto world, and also trying to make it easier, maybe for some people to get into that space. As I personally am convinced that this is definitely one of the pieces of the puzzles for rebuilding the world better. And so yeah, so the goal here is to do something quite interactive. So really, the goal is to ask questions so that we can get into this. Maybe as a quick introduction, like the reason why I wanted to do this is because I actually fundamentally believe that we are really close to a dangerous area, dangerous zone of hyperinflation. And the reason for that is because, hello, Nicola, thanks for joining. And so yeah, so we are entering a dangerous zone of hyperinflation, like we've seen in 1920s in Austria and Germany. That was kind of a long time ago, so I wasn't there, and none of us was there. But I started reading a book called When Money Dies, which basically tells the story. And there is some of the interesting things in that book, like a journal of a high middle class woman who shares like what it was like to live in Austria at the time. And it's striking how many similarities there are with what we're experiencing today. And I also have upstairs, actually. So I used to live in the States, and because of that, I still paid last year my taxes there. And I received in October a check from Donald Trump, right to Schaerbeek. I'm actually quite surprised it arrived all the way to Schaerbeek. And so yeah, because it's part of a stimulus plan, right? So they gave like $2,000 to every single American taxpayer. And more recently, Biden also voted a similar thing. And then you just realize that actually in the past 12 months, 50% of all the dollars in circulation have actually been printed in the past 12 months. And in Europe, it's not much better. We also are printing a lot of money right now. Some of that to help things that matter to us, but also a big amount of that to sustain fossil fuel companies and other industries that we know have little to no future, right? But of course, today they are very important, and they have a lot of people doing lobbying, of course, to get also kind of their part of the cake of all of those stimulus plans. And so as a result of that, yeah, it's obvious that if you start printing euros and dollars, that the value of €1 or $1 is going down. And we don't see that much yet in the kind of consumer market for various reasons that I can get back to in a moment. But we start seeing that actually in the real estate market, right? Where I was thinking that wow, with the lockdown, like, people will actually leave Brussels, for example, and leave big cities. And while that has been true in San Francisco, it hasn't really been true in Brussels. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of money sitting on bank accounts in Belgium. Interest rates on bank accounts are close to zero. They are even negative above a certain amount. And so yeah, so people are en masse trying to put their money into what they know is safe, which for previous generation is, of course, the default is real estate. And so we see prices going up because everyone wants to put their money out of their saving accounts and into real estate. And so we start seeing inflation on the real estate market. We don't see it yet in the consumer goods. And one of the main reasons for that is because in Europe, we have most of our goods actually processed. Food is processed. So you have those big companies like Nestle and others that basically get their kind of raw material, food, commodities, on the future market, right? So they have kind of a stable price to guarantee like a stable price. And so that way, like they can avoid the fluctuation of the spot market, right? And then on top of that, they also have plenty of tricks in the supermarket industry, right? Where they did a study in the UK and they've noticed that there's been like a reduction of 50% of the number of discounts, right? So you often all the time have like 5+1 free or those type of things, right? Of plus 20% free, all of those type of discounts. So all of that is going down. And so all of those are kind of mechanism that basically allow the end user, the end consumer to actually not really notice when there is a change in the cost of things. But in effect, there is one. And that's good for now, but in the future, and as we see food prices still going up in Asia, they're up plus 30% right now on commodity food. And so, yeah, so eventually it will trickle down to all of the economy. And that's where it's probably going to hurt much, much more. And of course, we don't talk much about all of that, right? We don't want to scare the population, I guess, for good reasons. And so, yeah, and I think like one of the ways to prevent that is actually crypto, right? We talk about Bitcoin as a digital gold, right? And I think that's a very good analogy. So first, like maybe to get the temperature check here, like how many of you are kind of familiar with Bitcoin? And you know what we're gonna do? I think let's do this. Let's do, before getting me like start talking forever, and that's not really nice and interactive. Let's start by doing a check-in. Like, please introduce yourself and say like, why are you here? What do you expect from this? What do you want to learn? Godefroy, you want to start? Because I see I unmuted.
I've been watching and playing with Bitcoin for 8 years, and I'm still interested to understand how others try to share the story to people. I've been trying for 8 years as well, with mixed success. Well, 2021 has been very good, but for the rest has been very slow. And so I was mainly interested to see what was your initiative.
Okay, great. Do you want to pass the mic to someone else?
Sure.
I can take it. Hi, so I'm Xavier, living in Brussels. I'm a teacher in economics, and my students are 15 to 18 years. That's 4 years. We are talking about Bitcoin during the classes because the kids ask me questions about it. And the point is, at the very beginning, I was like, I don't know. I was just repeating what I read in the newspaper, which was one-sided and mostly not wrong, but one point of view. And everything I see on the web and on your Twitter feed raised my, well, my question, like, what is it about really? And I just want to hear what is your point, since it looks like it's something else than I thought it was. And it may be the new web revolution about money, the way Uber did, the way Booking.com did, the way Airbnb did, and that's, yeah, just wanting to learn a bit more about Bitcoin so that I can, well, talk about it to my students in a more informed way from you.
Great. Do you want to pass it on to someone else?
Sure, Emmanuel or Nicolas or Pierre-Louis. Emmanuel?
Good afternoon. So indeed, my name is Emmanuel. I'm working in, let's say, computer stuff. So let's say programming and consulting in ICT for as long as I can remember. I always very interested in the internet when it started. I remember I was in Université Catholique de Louvain when I was young, not yet a student, and I was going to some some special internet rooms for the students, and I was already downloading a demo from some Sweden sites, if you remember, on FTP and floppy disk. So let's say
Those were the days.
I saw the internet coming what it is today, and I saw the crypto coming. I'm one of those who didn't find back my hard drive with Bitcoin on it. Yes, but again, it was fun at that time, and it's not fun anymore today. Okay, I'm trying to follow what is really the core of what everything at the social level is going onto the internet, not only the technical thing. So indeed, what is happening now regarding decentralized finance, coins, money on the internet, and so forth. So very interested in all these phenomena.
Great. Pass it on to someone.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm also interested in Bitcoins, and I want to understand this because I don't trust this. I'm honest with you. I really don't trust it because I don't understand it.
Mhm.
So as long I don't understand it, I won't trust it. Yeah, I want to hear about different opinions and of common people here in Brussels. I think everybody lives in Brussels here or around. Yeah, so I'm curious, simply curious.
Yep, so I will go ahead. So my name is Pierre-Louis. I'm into Bitcoin since 6 years, so I'm already convinced about Bitcoin and everything that goes around it. And right now I feel like I'm in a phase where I want to share my knowledge about it to other people. But right now, I believe all my information come from the same bubble of people and so on. So I'd like to open my mind to some kind of meeting right now. And it's great to meet new people and to share things. And so yeah, learn together and yeah, let's see what happens. But yeah, thanks Xavier for the initiative about this meeting.
Sure. And then Pierre, are you there? We cannot see you, but no. All right. And there was Julia that I saw joined and then like left. I don't know. I hope she doesn't have any connection issue. Yeah, because we are only men in this call, and I would love to find ways to make sure that we have like more diversity in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I get actually recently I introduced my partner to crypto a couple of months ago, and I was surprised at first, but she bit into it, so which is great. So let's try to make sure next call we have more women in this, because I think like the future of finance and all of that is not going to be built just by men. We need to make sure that this is going to be, we're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past. So please try to also like evangelize all of this to women as well. So where to start? So don't hesitate to interrupt me in asking questions. Like for me personally, like, yeah, I've been into Bitcoin since 2013. If I do remember well, I deeply regret buying SIM cards using Bitcoin, the most expensive SIM card ever. But of course, you know, we didn't know. But yeah, and also like my background is I'm an engineer in computer science, also from Louvain-la-Neuve. I also did CPME back in the days. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've been living in the States for 10 years, mostly in San Francisco. So I have a network there. And then I moved back to Brussels 3 years ago, and got myself quite involved in the climate movement, right? With Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future, and things like that. And so I found it quite interesting to see how the climate movement is asking for system change, not climate change, has been kind of very much against so far all of those cryptocurrencies because of the energy, right, it uses. Even though I would argue that actually they are actually our allies, right? Because for system change, we need to be able to have a way to not have to rely on the current financial system, right? Because the current financial system is actually still today massively involved in investing in fossil fuel energy, right? Very recently, Extinction Rebellion did some actions, and the KBC in office in Brussels, for example, to put the spotlight on the fact that they're still investing billions, literally, in all of that, right? And of course, we talk a lot about Bitcoin use of energy, but I think there is a massive difference between being a consumer of energy and being an investor in the way energy is produced, right? So in many ways, yes, that's true. Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. That's absolutely true. It's part of the design of it. It's part of the way to be able to create a currency that doesn't require trusting anyone. But Bitcoin doesn't care if the energy comes from renewable or fossil fuel. Bitcoin cares about how much it costs the energy, right? And so the real problem is not so much how much energy Bitcoin is using, it is the fact that how come is it still possible? Is it still to have energy so cheap, right? If it's dirty, right? Because as a matter of fact, today, the cheapest energy is solar energy. That is a fact. That's by far the cheapest. And in many ways, Bitcoin has really been helping that, right? And the reason for that is because Bitcoin is fundamentally, at this point, Bitcoin is a way to turn energy into bits that have monetary value, right? Because long story short, Bitcoin, right? You have this. I tried to make a quick summary, right? So it's a blockchain. What's a blockchain? It's basically an Excel spreadsheet that keeps a record of all the transactions, right? But to make sure that that it is decentralized, that anyone can have a copy of it, and that there is no collision whenever someone wants to write the database. There is this concept of proof of work. Show me that you've put the work, right? That costs energy, right? And therefore costs money, so that you can actually write that database. And so when you see headlines, because of course, mainstream media or media that are not expert because they're not following the space close enough, because they also follow other topics, like they lack clickbaits, right? And so a classic clickbait is, oh, Bitcoin uses more energy than this country or that country, the Netherlands or whatever. And actually, it's a feature. It's not a bug, right? It's a feature because you actually don't want a country to be able to change the data written in the blockchain, right? If they put all their resources for it, right? And so the idea that it takes so much energy to be able to write to the blockchain or to change it it's a feature, because it's the cost to corrupt the database, basically. So now, thanks to all that energy, it costs so much that actually it's almost impossible to corrupt. Emmanuel, you raised your...
Yeah, maybe, and if it's not to the point, you tell me. But from what you say about energy, you said dirty energy is so cheap. Maybe it's all energy is so cheap because let's say when you buy some box with some biscuits, sometimes you get a free glass or some ceramic with it, right? And it's being built with a lot of energy just to make that and to bring it from China to here with a biscuit. And the biscuit doesn't cost, let's say, a lot more than what it have cost without the glass or the ceramic, right? So the environmental problem is also linked to the fact that energy should be, let's say, not that cheap globally, not only
100%
globally.
Absolutely.
And maybe a question for you, because I'm following as well with little knowledge, but the Ethereum and the proof of stake
Yep.
instead of the proof of work. Can you maybe elaborate a bit why? I know there is a lot of discussion, let's say, in the community about that, but why do you think, or maybe you don't think, but can you compare proof of work against proof of stake? What would be more solid, you think, in regard of having something, let's say, of a country, another country would not be able to break the system?
Yeah, so
because there is a lot of contention for the moment between, let's say, Ethereum and Bitcoin on the matter, and maybe there is pro and cons. And do we have an advice on this? I don't. I don't know enough about the subject to elaborate.
So on the first point, I think yes, I think you touched the real problem, which is like right now the cost of energy, depending on the way it's produced, it's absolutely not reflecting the externalities and the cost on the planet and biodiversity and all of that. And that is the real issue. And I think like Bitcoin in many ways, it's kind of the canary in the coal mine. It's just a messenger. It just like, it just put to full light, because it's all open source, transparent. Everyone can compute precisely how much energy it takes and so on, right? So in many ways, a messenger. And I think like the thing that it's much easier to have those headlines about Bitcoin using that much energy than actually talking about the real thing that we should be talking about, which is a bloody carbon tax. But of course, people actually don't want it because there are so many industries that will basically go bankrupt because, as you mentioned in some of those examples, how many are not producing and have a business model based on a very, very low cost energy, right? Whereas Bitcoin actually couldn't care less. Because Bitcoin can basically put some solar panels in the middle of the Sahara Desert and then that will work. Because that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that you can actually turn energy into, you just need the internet connection and you can plug Bitcoin mining farms on solar panels in the total middle of the desert, right?
But people were want to mine, let's say, 24 hours a day. So you need battery, you cannot just, you can mine only
because you can,
solar, but nobody which
you don't have to mine 24 hours a day. You don't have to.
You don't need it, but every big miner do that 24 hours a day. And
but some of them move. Like that's the thing. It's some of them do that indeed 24 hours a day, but others actually move, right? So you see in some region of China, for example, where they get cheap energy during the wet season, for example, because of all of the dams, right? And there is a lot of energy, and so they go there, they turn on the mining farm because they have excess energy. So when you're an energy producer and you have excess energy that you have nobody to pay for then you just sell it at a really low price to get people. And then all the Bitcoin miner farms love that. And so they go there. And then when it's the dry season and there is not this excess energy, well, you will rather sell it to people who actually need that energy for other things because they're willing to put higher amount of money. And then those people, basically those farms are very mobile because at the end of the day, it's just like servers, right? Computers that you can move anywhere, right? So you could technically, and I'm sure there are some, I don't have like that top of my head, but like in the middle of the desert, a mining farm connected to solar panels. Godefroy, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I wanted to add that one of the very bad aspect of the problem today is that it's very cheap to get credit to buy infrastructure to mine Bitcoin. So if you can be trusted by the current financial system, then you get credit to invest into Bitcoin mining, and you make a lot of profit over it. So I think that's part of the problem that is opposed to Bitcoin is actually again a problem of the existing system. You have to, and so to reply to what Emmanuel was saying, obviously those guys, if they get those cheap investment, they're so happy to make them run 24 by 24. But if you are in mining for other reasons, which makes sense for people that want to protect political issues, for instance, then you don't really need to mine 24 times 24 if you have a very cheap source of energy, which could be solar panel, like just Xavier said. That's one thing.
Mm.
And then to
So
answer,
maybe it's a good segue to the proof of stake question of Emmanuel
yeah,
as
that's what I
well.
wanted
Yep.
to switch to proof of stake. So about proof of stake, the first issue is that nobody knows how it works at scale. So that's the first issue, is that we still need to see one chain that is able to make it work at large scale. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that what's totally unfair in case of proof of stake and does not play in the direction of free competition, and I think free competition is really important, is that proof of stake gives an advantage to the guys that have some coins before in the beginning, which is not the case with Bitcoin mining. With Bitcoin mining, if you invest today, you can buy new systems which are more efficient, which cost you less energy per hashes, and so you can actually move the market. So you have a way with the proof of work to move the market towards less expensive on the energy side, I mean, because you want to pay less electricity per hash. If you are in proof of stake, the first comers will have an advantage forever. Unless they spend some of their money, they will get the advantage because they owned the land, let's say this between quotes,
so
from the very beginning.
Yeah. So I think I think it's not an all story. I think it's an end story. And I think that's true for many things in life. And I think that we actually, when we talk about system change, not climate change, I think part of that is this change in our culture. Where we used to see the world as, it's either this is right. If this is right, this must be wrong, right? A very Newtonian way of thinking. There is an equation to anything. And if there is an equation, there is one answer. Right? And I think the world needs to move to this quantum reality where we actually understand that actually everything is probabilistic and depends on the observer. So when we say that, hey, you don't need a car in a city, yes, that's true. But when we say like, hey, but my parents that don't live in the countryside, they do need a car, that's true too. Right? So based on the observer, the reality is different, right? So we need to move away from this old way of thinking where this is also like very top down. And that's why we have those nation state and so on, where there is one solution, is the car, and everyone needs a car and everyone's going to have a company car, even though it means that we need to change cities and destroy them and whatever, right? And I think here's the same. Like I actually think that there is a place for both proof of work and for proof of stake. I think proof of work to me is great for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, I don't see any reason why Bitcoin will ever change to anything but proof of work. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin really is digital gold, right? And gold is basically it's something that people attach value to it because it's based on physics. There is a limited supply. We know, or we can predict more or less like how much new supply there's going to be every year. And it's very rooted in physics, right? There is no negotiations, politics involved with how much gold is actually going to be available on the market in a couple of years, right? Whereas the dollar, well, actually, as we see today, the US government can decide to actually, through politics, decide to increase the supply, right? And so I think that we're still going to see Bitcoin that's always going to be the digital gold. And I think we're going to see Ethereum and maybe others, right? That's actually going to transition to proof of stake because indeed it is so much more efficient, right? Because instead of having a proof of work that by design requires a lot of energy, you just need the proof of a stake, right? Like Godfrey explained, which is basically the people who own the coin. And we have basically a stake and skin in the game to be trusted and
we lost you for 10 minutes, Xavier. Sorry.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 minutes. That was a bit worrying. Hi, everyone. We are going to talk about Bitcoin. So as I was saying, like, so proof of stake to me has totally its place alongside proof of work. So Bitcoin is going to remain proof of work. I see no reason why it will ever change. And then Ethereum is already moving towards, actually, as we speak, there is 2 Ethereum chain going in parallel. There is the proof of work one and there is a proof of stake one as a test. They are both working in parallel right now as we speak. And they're going to transition normally in a couple of months to proof of stake. And I think proof of stake, like, it's a bit like today, like we have gold, but of course we don't use gold to pay for coffee. Right? We use all of those different means of payment, right? But then kind of at the very, very root of it, people might still exchange gold for very, very large amount or for a store of value. And I think it's going to be the same. Like, and I actually think that the market cap of Ethereum, to me, like should be much, much bigger than Bitcoin, because there are just many, many more transactions, right? Every day, and more commerce being done today with Visa, MasterCard than there is with gold, right? Because gold is just not practical. It's a great store of value, but it's not really practical to actually use day to day, right? So my point here is it's not or, it's and. So we're always gonna have proof of work. We're also gonna have proof of stake. And then depending on the use case, we're gonna use one more than the other. My point also I wanted to make through this call is so that's why, like, if you have questions, that don't hesitate, even if there are more basic questions, we don't hesitate to ask, because I think it's really important to convince people around us to, if they have savings in euros, this is very, very dangerous. I would really, that's what I've been doing myself. Like I try to get rid of as many euros as possible, because I just don't trust it. And I think that, yes, I'm really worried about hyperinflation. I'm really worried about all of that. And I think it would be just safe advice to get more and more people comfortable with Bitcoin. Xavier.
Yeah.
And then Nicolas.
Two first question. First one is, my first thought back in 2016 about Bitcoin was a giant Ponzi pyramid, that you have to convince other to get yourself some money afterwards. How to, well, I'm still discovering about crypto, but it's hard to let that Ponzi scheme out of my mind. And the second thing is, what if Europe launched its crypto, Facebook launched its Libra, the US launched and ban at the same time Bitcoins or alternative coins than they are doing?
Yeah, so look, on the Ponzi scheme thing, like I can see that, but arguably every single equity Tesla stock, even to some degree, like the euro or the dollar, are all also in many ways Ponzi scheme equivalent, right? I think what makes it different here is the fact that, and the fact that Bitcoin has been around for more than 10 years, like usually a Ponzi scheme pops at some point, right? Because there are people basically who are not driven by changing the world, they are driven by just making money for themselves, right? And indeed, for myself, and until now, I think what I shared on Twitter since 2013, things now and then about Bitcoin, but I've never really been like too much pushy about it for that very reason, because I felt a bit uncomfortable. But now, seriously, first, the reason why I changed my mind on that is because, one, I become scared about hyperinflation, and actually think that I want to help people around me, right? To me, it's about win and help win, make people around you also win. And also because, honestly, like, it's not at my level, doesn't gonna make any dent anymore when there are like, when BlackRock and Goldman Sachs have turned around and declared that actually Bitcoin is actually legit, right? They totally changed their mind on that. There is Elon Musk who put 1.5 billion into Bitcoin. So honestly, whatever Xavier Damon is going to put into Bitcoin, or people are gonna convince to get into Bitcoin, that is not going to influence the price in any way. So this is clearly not about me trying to pump a shitcoin. This is really about me helping other people around me, making sure that they are not going to wake up one day and then realize that, crap, all my savings are actually gone. And the more people that actually going to be able to it's like the beginning of the internet. Like the more people are gonna be aware of, and so I like Emmanuel's story about the first days of the internet. I remember as well with Skynet and CompuServe and all of that, right? Back in the days, like the earlier more people around us are gonna be into this, well, the earlier we're gonna have great company, startup, and being able to master that tool to reshape our society. And to me, like the internet has been such a driving force to disrupt, but in a positive way, like, you know, how we share knowledge. Like you talk about how, what if Europe will start their own cryptocurrency? But you know what? Microsoft started their own internet. MSN, if you remember back in the days, right? And then AOL, they started their own internet, right? And then Microsoft did their own Wikipedia on Carta, right? And then Google even tried, right? And then what we see is that actually the free open innovation space of the internet eventually won, right? And I think the same is gonna happen here. Like it is no doubt that China, Europe, Christine Lagarde just today or yesterday, like did a short video talking about the fact that the BCE is actually working on a euro coin, on a digital coin. It's obvious they will introduce that. What is not obvious is whether or not they will ban Bitcoin. I think we've seen other countries trying unsuccessfully to do that because it basically means shutting down the internet. So I'm very doubtful that that will happen. And in any case, I think like the internet, eventually open wins, because open means anyone is free to learn. There is no gatekeeper. Anyone is free to experiment, try. So in the long run, open always wins. Right now, Linux, the operating system, is the #1 operating system on Earth and on Mars. Nicolas, you also had a question.
Yeah. And then also was about the amount to invest at start, because that's a big move as well. Well, the big of loss, sorry for Nicolas. Nicolas? No, there is no Nicolas. The amount to lose is quite big, and how much to start to invest as well.
So for a while I was saying like it's absolutely crazy to not have at least 1% of your wealth in crypto, but actually today I think personally it's crazy not to have 50%. I think you cannot have all your eggs in the same basket. I think it also massively depends on your own financials, right? I don't know, everyone has a different situation, of course. It depends if you have a mortgage. It depends on a lot of things, right? So it depends. But I really at this point, like, and with the coronavirus and all the printing, the money printing that has been happening, I became super convinced that the value of a euro is going down. And when we see Bitcoin going up, it's only half of the story. The other half is the euro going down. And we don't talk about that. And so if there is money that you don't need like right now, I think it's dangerous to keep it in a saving account. And I will personally, I would put that in Bitcoin and Ethereum 50-50 to not take risks, stay away from all those other coins unless you have really time to dig into them, because that becomes much more risky. But yeah, Nicolas and then Godefroy.
Yes, thank you. Well, so as I understand, you support the idea that Bitcoins and Ethereum are a safe haven investment and not speculative investment. Mm-hmm. Well, when I see the evolution of the value of these assets, I doubt about this because it's very unstable. Mm-hmm. And personally, I will certainly not put 50% of my savings in something so unstable. Maybe I could earn a lot, but I think maybe I could lose a lot. That's the first thing. Second thing, yes, I have to say I'm still not convinced by this because I still don't understand what's the underlying asset behind the Bitcoin. Okay, it's a blockchain, it's a spreadsheet and so on, which is shared among people and so on. Okay, so I like your comparison with gold. Okay, gold is something physical. It's not political, just like Bitcoin. You can mine gold, just like Bitcoin too. But okay, the Bitcoins depend on the internet. It's precisely because it's not physical, and I don't see what's the underlying asset behind it. If I buy stocks, okay, I buy the piece of a company which creates value, which creates wealth. So this part has a value. Gold is recognized for centuries as something.
But actually, I think you get it right with the company example is a great example. Actually, when you buy stock, right, you basically buy, because a company doesn't exist neither. Huh? It's a fiction. I don't know if you read the book Sapiens from Yuval Noah Harari. Highly recommended.
No, but no. So sorry, a company do exist.
No, it's a fiction. It's a story we are telling ourselves. Fundamentally, if you look at BMW, it's a story that basically is used to organize people to work together to produce something that people will buy. And when you buy a stock, you basically buy like a share, right, of the future possible income that still has to be approved to be shared as a dividend, which a lot of companies don't necessarily do nowadays, right? When you buy Amazon stock, for example, or Tesla stock, there is no dividend. And so you just also kind of in a speculative way, buy whatever a company, because you believe the company is offering a good or a service. It doesn't have to be a good, can be a service, literally. Or like if you buy Microsoft, maybe it's a better example because it's purely software, right? So you basically buy a stock of Microsoft because Microsoft offers pieces of software and people pay licenses to basically use that software. So in a way, you can look at Bitcoin the exact same way, right? Bitcoin is a piece of software developed not by a company, but by a network. But that's the only difference, really, that offers a service that enables people to move value from point A to point B anywhere on this planet. And for that service, they pay a fee, right? And so in many ways, if you believe that this is a sound service that is needed and that more and more people will need that, then basically by buying Bitcoin, because there is only 21 million of them that's ever going to be produced, you know that if you buy one Bitcoin, you're going to have 121 millionems of the stock price, so to speak. Right. And my point about giving that example that I like about a company is because it helps you understand that it doesn't have to be backed by like gold, by something physical. Microsoft fundamentally is only bits on computers, right? But still it has value because people are willing to pay to use those.
Okay, but who controls?
Xavier, just to add on what Xavier said, I suppose today you can say I trust euro, and euro is not in any way linked to something in a bank safe today. It just prints out of nowhere when you go for a loan in a bank. It's invented money that's happened to exist while it was not existing just before. So that example say also, if you trust euro, that means in a way you should not be against the Bitcoin ecosystem or some crypto ecosystem. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, but okay, you're right, but you can say the same thing for all the currencies. You can say the same. The same for the dollar, for all the currencies.
Yeah, but sure. But until in 1400 and until 1400, the people who gave you, let's say, bills, that was a proof there was something in a safe, right?
Yes.
And at some point in time, they figure out I can give more paper than I have in the bank because not everybody come in the safe at the same time, and that's the banking system as we know it today.
I know. So and it's been a long time central banks are printing a lot of money. It can be for the euro, but it is the same for the dollar in the US. Well, actually, since the crisis of 2008, the central banks are printing a huge amount of money. So sooner or later, this money will go down into the real economy. That's certain. Nobody knows when, but sooner or later it will happen. Yes, so it's someone who has money on a bank account should think to this. I'm 100% agree. But I think we can say this for all the currencies, not specifically the euro, but
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And the question is, in the day of COVID and all of that, and all of those different countries printing a lot of money and trying to bail out all of those companies, where do you believe? Where do you put your trust? It's all based on trust, basically,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And do you basically trust the are you gonna trust Microsoft Encarta, Britannica Encyclopedia, or are you gonna trust Wikipedia? And which one do you want to fund? Right?
It's like like always in investment, you don't have to put all your eggs in the same basket.
No, that's
and
then got fire.
I think you have to buy stocks, certainly. You have to buy I think gold is something interesting. Cryptocurrencies, yes, why not? But I still think it's a speculative investment and not a safe haven investment. Yes, I think personally, I put my money in what I understand and in what I believe it will grow, or it is a safe haven.
That's really what you should do. Huh? The thing is about this discussion, and I really understand your point. If you take some steps back, what they are currently doing with money, what everybody think is somewhat solid, is not that much solid, right? And I understand your point saying, okay, Bitcoin maybe is not solid, or maybe not that much solid as well, but it's always comparing two in a way, right? With gold, today, if you have some gold, you can give some gold and get some services. But if tomorrow somebody say, okay, I'm not interested in gold anymore because I cannot buy services or things with it anymore, gold will no more be a safe refuge anymore as well. Huh? So things can change. I think nobody here says things have changed, but globally, leaving your, let's say, euro or USDs in a bank account may be perceived as a risk today in regard of putting some part of those money in another system, which may be Bitcoin. I've put a link in the discussion, the first one. It's a guy, let's say, pro Bitcoin, of course, but which have drawn some kind of shape of how Bitcoin performed, I would say, over the year with some metrics. And he says Bitcoin is now becoming close as a value, closer as gold. And it says if it continues to follow that shape, I would say, it will go up to real estate, right? So the point I think of Xavier is maybe look and be aware that things may slowly change.
Yes, I'm staying aware, but well,
look, I think there is no point in trying to convince here, and that's not the goal of this call, right? I think it's more about, hey, what type of things do we each need to learn more about so that we can make our own opinion, right? Because of course, like I didn't give the disclaimer, but this is not the classic disclaimer. This is not financial advice. Do all of that on your own risk, blah, 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 blah. You get the spiel. But the point is really not trying to convince each other, getting out of that, but more about sharing information and helping each other see the world differently, right? To better understand like what is really coming, what is ahead of us that is actually not super obvious to see at first, right? It's not super obvious to see at first that the euro that we think is so strong and so solid is actually maybe not as strong and solid as we think it is. And here is why. Maybe it's not obvious to see that, oh, Bitcoin that is not pegged to a physical good is maybe actually trustworthy. And here is why you should actually reconsider your position. You might want to reconsider your position or not, right? So I think every one of us needs to make a decision for ourselves, and every one of us needs to understand before we can properly invest to the level that makes sense. I want to go to Godefroy because he's been waiting for a while to ask a question.
Not as a question, more like a comment. I think that something that most of us don't realize before we dig is that most of us has no idea of what money is actually. It was the case for me. I don't know for the others, but I needed to dig a lot. What is money? What services I'm asking to money? What services is the society asking to money? And that's the first thing. And once you learn about that, I really advise that you read the book, The Bitcoin Standard, because they have a pretty nice model about money, which is derived from the Austrian economics school. So that's a school that's led by Austrian economists since beginning of the 20th century. And they look at economy in a different way as the people that actually drive us today. And when you think about money the way they think about it, you finally, for instance, understand why there were no wars in China in the 19th century. We killed the China Empire through inflation of their silver. They were using silver as money at a time where Europe was stopping to use silver. So we had a lot of silver that we were happy to throw to their economy, and then we could buy literally their economy at no cost. And that's something that's I had been wondering for a very long time why we needed war in Africa, why we needed war in India, why we needed war in Southern America. And I had never heard about war in China, or very limited. And once you understand that actually one money can displace another money, and you can understand that only if you understand what money is, if you begin to think, why is gold money, for instance? Because gold, the main advantage among most physical things is the fact that you can't do anything with it, only use it as money. I mean, you can do jewelry, but jewelry is because it's linked to the value. It's not linked to the service, because you can do jewelry with a lot of other stuff than gold. And since the Industrial Revolution and the electronics, yes, we've found that gold can be very useful because it's a better conductor of electricity than copper. But at the time, gold was used by people as money. It was useless. It was not strong enough to be used as a tool. So now then you need to dig and try to understand what were the characteristics of gold that made it useful as money. And once you get to those aspects, and again, it's a question of opinions. None of us have lived with gold as money. I'm maybe the oldest among the troop here, and I was born 4 years before they stopped the conversion between dollars and gold, which meant also stopped the conversion.
73, no?
71.
71.
Yes. And so if we don't understand what money is, there's no way we can understand why Bitcoin could serve in anything. If I can give one reason I think Bitcoin is better than any money, is because it's provably scarce. That's one of the very good characteristics of gold. The fact that everybody knew that it was close to impossible to double the quantity of gold in 1 year. And currently we are roughly at 2% inflation of the amount of gold that we can dig out of the ground. Nobody knows if it's actually 2% or 5 or 1. It's not very important. It's the order of magnitude. And what we can provably show with Bitcoin is that today we are at the same level. So we have an inflation of Bitcoin that's totally comparable to the inflation of gold. And in the coming years, with the fact that we will be producing less and less Bitcoins, we will actually produce less Bitcoin comparably to gold. So if we buy that one of the aspects, not the only one, but one of the aspects that we demand to money is to be scarce, Bitcoin is the only one. Well, you could argue that you can do it with other cryptocurrency, except that they don't have the same network, and in this case they don't have the first mover advantage, which makes a very big difference. So, this is the first time with numbers that we use with Bitcoin that we can prove that it's actually scarce. And then you can think of the other advantage or other characteristics of money that you want. You want it to be permanent. That's one of the last thing of gold, is that if you keep gold, it's not rotting into your storage. You go to it 1,000 years after, it's still the same gold, and that's one of the reasons people liked gold as representation of money. Well, if you use digits, I mean abstraction, those don't rot at all. That's for sure. Now you can go further. Another thing people were asking to gold was to be chopped into pieces. So you could, but that has some limitation, because it's pretty hard to prove that you still have gold if you chop it in pieces. So you could take a lingot, I don't know, an ore, is that ore? I never know how you say that in English. So if you take a lingot d'or, you can chop it into coins, and you know that even the coins, you can make them smaller and have smaller amounts. In that regard, Bitcoin is again far superior. As some of you might know, one Bitcoin is actually 100 million satoshis. So it's already divided in 100 million parts. So it could be divided later if we want, but that's not the point now. And so I won't do the whole list because I could go on for 1 hour, so I will stop. But trying to learn what money is, and really, so I express the characteristic, but how those characteristics are actually useful for the service that you ask, storing value, using it as a medium of exchange, then getting it as a unit of account, all those things, then you slowly start to think in terms of Bitcoin, not in investing, but in using, which is very different. I'm using Bitcoin as a store of value because it will keep its value much better than my euros that are being decayed by Christine Lagarde at a crazy speed. And that's not an investment in this case. It's comparing two monies, exactly like the Turkish people are doing today. They're watching their Turkish lira that lost 60% in 5 years.
16.
Of value.
No, I mean, it's the inflation right now, it's 16%.
Yeah, but it's 60% of value in 5 years.
In 5 years, okay.
Yeah, so 12% in that case. So that's a lot. And if they compare liras and euros, obviously they say, okay, I'd like to have euros. That's normal. And they say, I don't trust my money anymore. And I'm in the position today, like you started with Xavier, where I don't trust euros anymore. And I don't trust dollars anymore. And so that's why I'm using Bitcoin to, not as an investment that would bring me money back. No, it's as a place that will save my money. Totally. And I'm lucky enough to be one of the first that it will grow.
Yeah. And I agree. Like I want to tell another story, which is, thank you, Godfrey. This is really, really great. So I have a friend of mine, Santi Siri, who is Argentinian. And so in Argentina, they've been, they had like crazy inflation going on, right, all the time, right? And I went there for a couple of weeks, and then what people do there, they basically come from abroad with dollars, and then they change on what they call the blue dollar, right? They will go in Buenos Aires, and then they will just once a week, go and go to those like press shops and then exchange some dollars for local pesos, right? And they will keep basically as much as possible, they will keep dollars because they trust the dollar way much more than the local currency, right? Because they experienced hyperinflation and so on. And so in many ways, I actually think once you start realizing that because of all the money printing that has been happening right now in dollars and in euros, that actually the dollars and in euros are actually not so safe anymore, then what is the currency that you're gonna use? You know, if the euro or the dollar is the equivalent of the Argentinian pesos, what is the equivalent of the USD for those Argentinian, right? And that's the same in Venezuela, that's the same now in Turkey, right? So arguably, maybe to edge on the European and American, the West world economy, maybe you should buy some yen from China, except you cannot, right? Because they don't let you buy yen. Okay, so if you cannot do that, then what do? Well, you could buy gold, but honestly, it's not really practical, right? And then Bitcoin, yes, it's the digital gold because there is a totally, we know exactly how much, as Godfrey just explained it really nicely, there is a limited amount. And at this point, there is enough people and institutions around the world that believe in it, that they've invested. Like, it's not nothing when you have a company like Tesla who put $1 billion into it, but there is also Jack Dorsey with Square that also put part of their money into Bitcoin. Like, there is enough, and this is just only the beginning. It's opening the way. Like right now, even Goldman Sachs and others are actually, even though they said that it was a Ponzi scheme, it said it was a joke, right now in the very recent weeks, they actually turned around, right? So I think there is enough social proof that this is Bitcoin in enough time, because it's been more than 10 years now, to prove that this is solid technology, to prove that there is social proof, to prove that it's not going to go anywhere. And so basically I said, like, okay, this is the only, almost like the only place right now, that and real estate, basically, where you can actually put your money if you don't want to keep it in euros or dollars on a saving account that doesn't provide any interest rate. The other thing I wanted to add is this concept of inflation and inflationary and deflationary mean of exchange. Right now, the euros and the dollars are inflationary, right? It means that every year, everything costs more money, right? And as a result of that, it incentivizes people to consume, right? That's why we are living in those capitalistic societies where basically the whole game is consume, consume, consume to make the economy grow, to give everyone a job, and blah, blah. And we know that this is bringing us straight to collapse because we are consuming way much more than nature is able to provide. We are overfishing. I don't know if you've seen the movie Seaspiracy on Netflix. We are overproducing meat, we are overproducing everything, right? So we need to move from an economy of buying what you want to an economy of buying what you need. And here is the thing that is interesting with Bitcoin. Since I switched my mind and I'm getting rid as much as possible of my euros and getting into Bitcoin, you know what? I'm thinking twice now before buying anything. Because if I decide to buy something today, I basically say like, fuck, in a couple of months, this could have been more money. I actually don't want to buy anything anymore unless I really need it, right? A couple of months ago, actually, I get some money off some of the, of my holdings in crypto, right? Because I wanted to make an investment, but then I thought like, geez, like right now, it would have been worth much more. So it forces me to think twice. Whereas when I have euros, actually, because it's an inflationary, actually, I'm better off spending it as soon as I can. Right? And I love that. And again, in the call for system change, not climate change, I think we'll be much, much, much better off to not be using an inflationary, this hard word. You understand what I mean, right? So that's one way. And the other way is honestly, to me, like this whole blockchain and Bitcoin is totally part of like the internet, of the disruption of the current establishment. And we know how bad the current establishment has been to protect us from climate change. So I absolutely don't trust any of the banks right now. ING, BNP, the KBC, they have way too much investment in fossil fuel, way too much. And I think that keeping money, and so I think we need to disrupt them. And I think Bitcoin is definitely one piece of the puzzle to disrupt them. I'm just gonna plug this, otherwise I'm gonna, talking of energy, that's the other thing. We talk a lot about the energy consumed by Bitcoin, but someone made a brilliant tweet about the energy consumed by Netflix, with all the people turning on their screen to watch Netflix and all those hours. And I think this was a brilliant analogy to show how much energy we use for other things that may or may not be justifiable as something that we really need. But I'm getting off. Pierre-Louis, I want to hear from you because you.
Yeah, sure. I just want to add that maybe nowadays people think that Bitcoin may be speculative and don't think about just the store of value. It just maybe because it increased very too quickly, and we are not aware of investment or security that increase 100% per year or something. So maybe one day when Bitcoin will just increase like 10% a year, it will be more normal. But guess what? This will maybe happen, but maybe in 10 or 20 years. But that will be when the price of Bitcoin will be very, very high. So we are just now in the train to that station. And then maybe we will have a more calm increase, which will be more normal for people. And maybe they will treat it as, oh, that's maybe a good store of value. It's not to a roller coaster. But yeah, it will be too late to I don't know, too late for what? Too late to make money? That's another point of view.
Yeah, totally. And actually, we start seeing that now with the altcoins, right? So today was a pretty bad day for crypto. And so we see Bitcoin losing 5-10%, Ethereum losing 5-10%, but then the altcoins losing 20%, right? And it shows how much actually when something starts, and it's normal, right? I don't know, like
a Dogecoin.
Yeah, that's another all different story. We can go back to that. That kind of blows my mind. But it's like anything when you start, right? It's super. When you start a company, when you start a startup, how do you price it? It's super hard, right? And so at the beginning, of course, things move a lot until you basically find kind of a resonance, and it's kind of price discovery, and that's what's happening right now. Xavier.
So So Godefroy said there was the first mover advantage, and as I see the Bitcoin, it's more a flagship for what crypto money is. And the question is, could be Bitcoin to money what MySpace was to social media? And then what to think about Cardano, Lumen Stellar, Dogecoin, Ether, Anchor. Well, once you start to dig in, then you discover a whole world. And then you say, well,
the rabbit
Bitcoin
hole.
could be the most branded marketing one. And there are 21 millions, but then Ether, there is no limit, as I understood. And so there is a wide area then.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think first, Bitcoin is not the first mover. There were other attempts at building internet gold, internet money, right? And so Bitcoin was not the first, but it's the first that obviously reached this point. So I think that I think that to me, it's like TCP/IP, SMTP, and then you had Gopher back in the days, FTP, right? So obviously today we don't talk much about FTP anymore, or Gopher, definitely not. But we still use SMTPs every day for emails, right? And so things evolve, but then there is kind of one kind of protocol that everybody, by definition, there is a reinforcing mechanism, right? So I think that at this point for Bitcoin, it seems to be, to me, like game over, as I really have a hard time to imagine, just because look how much time it takes for enabling a company, an institution like Tesla to trust it enough to put $1 billion in investment. As we speak today, like only now we have one of the first mayors, like Francis Suarez in Miami, right, who talks about paying people in Bitcoin and putting some of the reserve of the city into Bitcoin, right? All of those institutions that slowly move into crypto, it takes them so much time. And so many people need to talk to them for them to get more comfortable with the idea and stuff. That if tomorrow Cardano or whatever, like come on, like we are only getting started with Bitcoin and it's been 10 years. Like, so it's gonna, I really don't see anything beating Bitcoin at this point for storing of value, for the equivalent of digital gold. Now, for the other things, for Ethereum, then we are more into the Ethereum space, right? That enables all of those other amazing applications of what can you do once the internet allows you to exchange value and not only bits of freely copyable information. And for that, to me, like the way I look at Cardano and Polkadot and all of those other initiatives, like they're all super interesting. And this is just my own personal opinion, but it feels to me like it's a bit like, you know, we talk a lot like, oh, who is going to be the Uber of X or the Uber of Y, right? Or the Google of X back in the days, even further away, right? And then we realized that actually the Google of maps was Google Maps, and the Google of X, Y, and Z was actually Google. And that doesn't mean that there won't be any more like niche, right, that's going to be useful. So I have no doubt that there will be like very successful blockchain that's going to be used by some applications, right? There might be like a NFT dedicated, right, non-fungible token dedicated blockchain that's going to optimize for that use case. But I think that for interoperability reasons, they're all going to piggyback at some point to Ethereum, right? And so Godfrey, maybe I think you have a different opinion on that. I don't know. I guess that anyway, I'm curious to hear your thought on that, Godfrey. But I think like we don't know. I think I don't think that anyone knows. I think it's still the journey. I mean, we have to find out. But personally, it feels like there is a massive network effect. But Godfrey, you want to say something on that?
Yeah, what I want to say is that with store of value will come the money aspect of it, and there I think it cannot be replaced. I'm not saying Ethereum will go away, but if Ethereum is to survive, in my opinion, it will be using Bitcoin as backing it at a moment or another, because we will need to have some sort of stable value that we can trust. And you cannot trust a system that's emitting money forever. And people will learn that. We forgot about it for 50 years, but we won't unlearn it a second time that quickly, at least not in my lifetime, I don't think so. And even not in a century, I would be very doubtful about this. So that's why I mean that it does not mean Ethereum won't exist, but I can't see it taking over Bitcoin because, as you said, Xavier, it's a crazy amount of work to build the network we have today. We estimate that 100 million people have touched Bitcoin. You have, I don't know how many exchanges available that sell Bitcoin. And all those people, they had to build some sort of regulatory compliance in their own countries. All those aspects are not that easy to build again. And one of the things that Xavier did not mention, okay, Tesla took 1.5 billion, but what it actually means is that they spoke to the SEC, which is the biggest controlling institution in the US, to get an approval, because they had the way Tesla announced their buying in Bitcoin was through an official and formal document that had been pre-approved by the SEC.
Yeah, because they're a public company.
Because they are a public company. And if you have been in Bitcoin for a long time, you know that it's like 4 or 5 years that we are waiting for an ETF to be approved.
Yep.
And it's still not the case. So the fact that the SEC allowed Tesla to do what they did, and actually that DLO did for MicroStrategy a few months before, those are points that will be very hard to reproduce again, mainly because of what we call in the Bitcoin community number goes up technology. Because when people come to you, they first speak of Bitcoin. Then, sure, like you said, the other Xavier, you discover there are plenty of them, and you put your toes and you buy some of Ripple, Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano, or if you are take more risk, one of the 750 that you will find on CoinMarketCap. But you will soon realize that if you follow them, most of them, they come in the 10 biggest for a few years, then they go away. There are very few of them that are able to remain at the top. Until now, we have four cryptocurrencies, and if you compare their values, they are a totally different orders.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I think it's maybe a good comparison of that is the stock market, right? And then you compare Bitcoin to dollar, right? And then you have the stock market, and of course you can buy the currency dollar, and it's gonna maybe appreciate value, but very, very, very slowly, and depends like compared to what. But then, or you can buy and put an investment in some stock. Like you can buy some BlackBerry stock, right? And then it goes up, 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 and you go crazy. And then of course, at some point, BlackBerry actually dies because, you know, it's not anything in fashion anymore. And then the value of the stock goes down. And so maybe you get out of the stock at the right time, or good enough. And then you can go and invest in Apple or whatever. And all of those stocks, basically, some live longer than others. At the beginning, they have, of course, much more upside than investing in dollars, in the currency, but dollars and the currency, of course, outlive all of those stocks, right? And I think like this is the same with Ethereum and Bitcoin, basically, and with all of those other altcoins. I think like there is definitely way much more upside to be made, right, on all of those altcoins, but it's of course much more dangerous, and you better follow that closely to know when is it overvalued, when it is not. And if you want to take it safe, play it safe, I would put, personally, my personal recommendation is put 50% in Bitcoin and 50% in Ethereum. And to me, that seems like a good mix to trade between like safety of, to me, Bitcoin is super safe, and Ethereum has actually, to me, more upside than Bitcoin, while having proved enough that it is there to stay.
In regard of Bitcoin to Ethereum comparison, am I right to say that either Ethereum is on one hand side a coin, I would say, and on the other side, on the other hand, sorry, a system? And I think I understand that what they intend to do with their system could, time will tell, go further than what Bitcoin can do. So not comparing the crypto money, I would say, the Ethereum per se between Bitcoin, but the Ethereum system with all their virtual machine and so forth. I for the moment think that they can go further. Maybe they will not succeed doing so. And maybe the Bitcoin will stay the more valuable crypto money, I would say. But the Ethereum system, underlying system, seems to have possibilities to go further.
I agree with that. But to me, like, it's maybe a fair comparison would be comparing gold and dollars, right? Gold is a limited supply, dollars is inflationary, but you can do so much more with dollars because it's easier to carry around, and you can buy stock and of all of those companies and right. So that's why I think it's not or, it's and. But I also think that to me, like the faster we get people around us to at least get interested in that, because to me there is no doubt this is the new internet. Is we are used to the internet of information, now this is the internet of value, and I think like there is so much that needs to be explored yet. Like the internet, fundamentally, you could do, especially at the beginning of the internet, everything with the post office, right? You could send emails on paper, right? But of course, once it becomes bits, it becomes programmable, and then it opens all new different applications. And I think this is the same with the Internet of Value, right? Of course, whatever you can do with DeFi, right? Decentralized finance and Ethereum and so on, in many ways, we can do it today, except today it takes forever because you need to go through notaries, you need to go through lawyers and all of that, right? So what happens, which is the equivalent of the postman and the post office for sharing information, for getting the newspaper at your door, right? And of course, it changes everything once that cost goes to zero and the time it takes goes to zero too, right? And now you start having like two ways feedback. Now anyone can start a newspaper, right? What if everyone can start a bank? What if everyone can start lending money at scale? Of all of those type of things. And those are things that we are not even scratching the surface of what is going to be able to be possible, right? So I think the question is more like right now, how do we create an environment around us, right, where more and more people are gonna get into the space, that there will be more innovation, and we're gonna stop, defending too much the old system. Because right now, like, we need to get more politicians who are in power to get to understand Bitcoin. Why are our mayors, why there is no, who is the Francis Suarez of Belgium? So the Francis Suarez is the mayor of Miami, who is really pro Bitcoin, right? So we need to make sure that politicians are also going to be involved in this, right? Because they need to understand that too. We have an interest in a shared interest in all of that. And so yeah, and I think because what are we going to do, like once the euro is going to be worth much less than what it's worth today, like all our cities also have their budget in euros. We're all going to suffer unless some cities are going to be smart enough to put some of their savings in a different, right, in a different currency, right? So anyway, I wanted to make some announcement because we are reaching, like, I wanted to close by 10:30. We're gonna do one last round, a checkout round, to get your feedback and stuff. But just an announcement, like on the 3rd of May, we're gonna do a people assembly on Bitcoin, especially on the topic of Bitcoin. Is it system change or climate change, right? That's really geared towards all of those people who think that it's actually very, very bad and we should, because of the energy consumption and stuff. It's going to be with Tuur de Meester. I don't know if you know him. He's a fellow Belgian. He's really been into cryptocurrencies a lot. He's also been an investor in mining farms. So he will be able to tell a lot of stories about that. So it's going to be quite interesting. The goal is really to make, as a people assembly, the goal of people assembly is to unite behind the science, right? To avoid the classic clickbaits of traditional media. So getting experts who actually are in the field to explain their point of view. The last one we organized was on 5G, because there was also like a myth of, there is plenty of good reasons to be against 5G, but health issues aren't one. And coronavirus and one neither, right? So being able to get experts who can really talk about the technology, saying like what is really the pros and then cons, and then also having citizens from different age, different gender, different backgrounds, living in cities, in countryside, to be able to express their concerns, right? Because behind every fake news, there is a real emotion, right? People are afraid of what they don't understand or what they don't know. And that's why people assemblies are so important. So please have a look. And if you have friends who are interested in this topic, please, really, the more diverse group we're going to be at this people assembly, I think the more interesting it's going to be. And so that's on the 3rd of May at 8 p.m. And I can share the link, actually. Let me share the link. I should share the link with you. That would be easier. And then the other thing is, if you are interested in the topic, we are also working on coming up with a seminar, like a 4-week course. We will do like a once a week, 2-hour call to dig deeper into Bitcoin, but also make it like, the idea is really to onboard people into Bitcoin, and making sure that by the end of the seminar, people have enough trust in the system to put some of their savings into it, whatever amount that is, but at least they get to experience it, right? Because I think there is nothing like for people to have their own, Coinbase or Kraken account or Binance account and have actually their first few, 100 euros there, and then being the only way to learn is to experience, right? And there is a lot, and I see that with my own parents. Was a discussion no later today. They really fear, and for that generation, like they trust much more the person they talk to at the ING bank, right? Even though that person, of course, have absolutely no idea of what's going on, right? But for them, it's easier for them to trust that than to trust this new world, right? And so we really need to bring people. And so same thing, if you know people in your family or friends that will be interested in that, that's also something that we are planning for the month of May.
When you say we, who is we?
It's my partner Lane and myself who've been organizing the People Assembly on 5G, and Lane is a professional facilitator, and so and also like she's really used to creating interactive learning spaces, and so we're also probably gonna invite guests, to also experts to also contribute to that. And so yeah, our goal is to basically realize that in Belgium there is actually no crypto school, right? And I think like, geez, like we need one, right? Really, really badly. And so it's kind of a first attempt at trying to do that. So with that, let's do a last round, just as a checkout. Like, really curious to hear like what was your feedback after an hour and a half. Maybe share like one thing that you learned. Would be nice to share, and then you pass it on to the person on your right, whatever that means on your screen. The first person top left for me on my screen is Emmanuel. So you start.
Oh, try it new and new. So, Nicolas, I don't have, let's say, any investment in cryptos yet. I've always been very careful with the tiny amount of money I have left in the end of the month. But I'm, let's say, I'm interested in how things are working. And I'm aware as well that, let's say, our governments or banks is not are not working well enough nowadays. So I just want to be sure when it's the moment, I'm ready. I'm not too late. Not to make money, but to be in another stability. So that's what I for me, what the summary of this meeting is. There's a lot to understand, not really to reject or to have fear, but to try to understand. And if it's not for today, if it's not for 1 year, maybe just knowing what's happening on different rail tracks is always a good thing.
Just on that, I would really recommend you and like to just open like a Coinbase account that's easy, and then just put like 10 euros automatic recurring, 10 euros a month. Like, it just, the simple fact of doing it and experiencing it will also kind of force you to pay more attention to it, and it's a great way to learn. Who is on your right?
Can do it.
Okay.
So as a teacher, well, this is interesting for me just to still be aware of what's happening and be able to exchange ideas and facts about bitcoins. And about that, I wrote that it was a piece of software developed by a community that offers a service to move value from point A to point B, which is the main object. I've been interesting about talking about the alternative coins, which obviously came up. And then, well, as a teacher, I have a mortgage. I'm starting in life. So the question is always, well, should I keep money on a bank account to make a real estate investment thing, and how much money can I spend in cryptocurrency. And so that's something I may invest the first euros just to start. And again, you know something when you start, may start, but again, that's as Nicolas say, I have to understand more, and I think it's a pretty good step. So we'll keep on that way. But there is always that question about, well, will I ever see my money again, or is this a giant bubble that sometimes will explode?
Mm.
But thank you for the call and the explanation, and let's keep let's keep on attention. And on my right is Godefroy.
I had a good time. Thanks. Thanks for the initiative, Xavier. And I wanted to add one last thing for Xavier. Actually, it's not Xavier XCPME, Xavier Daman. The other one is that we actually, Pierre-Louis and I, have been trying to teach. We made a few sessions already. It's really not easy, and that's also a comment for Nicolas, is that you need to spend an incredible amount of stuff if you want to learn about it, because the first step is to unlearn so many things that you don't know you know, because you learn to use money without knowing that you were learning to use money. So most of us have a ton of preconceptions that are totally unconscious. So you need an enormous amount of hours to begin to understand that system. And if you are not an IT guy, which I don't know because you did not mention, Emmanuel said he was an IT guy, then you have the other problem that Xavier or Pierre-Louis or Emmanuel or I don't have, is that we understand the IT behind it, the technology under it, or at least some part of it. And so if you have to both learn the money and economics aspect on one hand, and then the technology on the other hand, I totally understand why you feel totally not secure, because it's a very, very big amount of work if you want to really understand any detail, every detail, and not any detail. So, but as I said in the beginning, the main pleasure in the beginning was to realize how few I knew about the current system by seeing it opposed to something very different. So many people are criticizing Bitcoin, and then you are trying to understand what they mean, and then you suddenly realize that there are so many things that I did not know about the system we live in today, which even though I thought I knew. And so that was also, so I think it's really normal that it takes so much energy. And that's why the fact that the price goes up is really a good motivation for most people, because I know a lot of people I spoke to like 4 or 6 years ago. Pierre-Louis is one of the very few that listened to my shit, let's say it this way. But most people take really a long time, because for good reason, they don't trust the system because it's so many things to learn. And
Totally.
just as a last remark, I put in the chat a candle chart that shows how the value of Bitcoin evolved in the 8 last years per year. And then you realize that it's a quite good store of value if you don't need your money in 6 months.
Thank you. Who's on your right? Who is on your right, Godefroy?
On my right, Emmanuel. So let's go. Xavier, he spoke. So Nicolas.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I listened a lot to all what you said. It's been about 10 years now. Central banks are printing a lot of money. The Fed in the US, the European Central Bank here in Europe. And it's been 10 years, I hear people saying hyperinflation is about to come. Well, maybe it will come next year, maybe in 10 years, I don't know. But I think we have to think about it, and the problem is to protect our money at the good time, in the good time, to have the good timing with it. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Well, there's a second thing I want to say about cryptocurrencies. So it's I'm not against it, but I still have doubts. I think we don't have to forget that cryptocurrencies exist because it depends of the internet. So who controls the internet? No one and everyone. So let's imagine there is in the future a big shutdown of the internet or whatever. Or, what will happen with the people who own cryptocurrencies? That's also something I'm thinking about. I think I also learned a lot of, I would say, political opinions about Bitcoin, climate change, system change, and so on. Well, in my mind, I try to separate all these things because yes, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are about economy. I don't see this as a political topic personally. It's just a new way of making money transfer, money exchange, of trading and so on. But well, I personally don't see the political topic in it. Yeah, okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Pierre-Louis?
Well, yes, so thank you very much, everyone, for the discussion. What I take from this is that we are still very early into these things, and not even early into the price, but also I believe in the understanding of basic concept of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and economics, even for smart and open people like all of you. And so I believe that sharing knowledge is key to move forwards, especially because we will have still very hard times in the following months, years, and maybe decades. So it's very important to understand well what it is all about. But also we have to understand that there is no a single truth. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what Xavier is saying. And anything. You have to do your own opinion, and there is no one good opinion about that. And so yes, and so my second thing I want to do after that is that I believe a lot of people also in my close friends are not that they are not very familiar with English, and most of teaching stuff about Bitcoin in economics are in English. And so I will do my part to make it some teaching in French for those people. And I think it's very important to go on to local people that are not familiar with the internet, English, and so on. So yeah, thank you very much.
Well, totally. Absolutely. I think sharing knowledge it's really what needs to happen, and that's kind of one of the goals of this type of calls. And I'm glad to hear that you already started, Pierre and Pierre-Louis and Godefroy to start a class on that. I will be actually curious, not now, but another time, to hear more about your experience, and see also if you want to collaborate in what we are trying to do, because I think it's definitely not a zero-sum game, and indeed, like, there is so much need to. Already, you just mentioned like different languages, but also languages is beyond French or English. It's also the language of what is going to touch more and resonate more with women. what is the language that's going to resonate more with the boomer generation, with the millennial, or the, you know. And so that's why, like, there is not a single source of truth, and there is a lot of different perspectives. And on that, actually, I'm going to share with you this recent video that I saw, which actually it's a black guy who shared the story of Bitcoin in the black community, and I think it's fascinating to hear their perspective, which is very different. And so they just did 2 videos so far, but I think it's really, really great quality. So I will invite you to have a look. And so I think like there is value for every one of us to share within our own eyes, in our own worlds, in our own communities. Why do we think it is important? And I want to quickly to react to what Nicolas was saying. I think like a tree, like the best time to buy Bitcoin was maybe 10 years ago, but the second best time is today. And I would also invite people to take baby steps, small steps, right? Sure, like just put 10 euros maybe now, but just to get used to it, and give yourself a reason to pay more attention. Otherwise, we always put it tomorrow, because we don't see, and then it's too late. And then it's too late because all of a sudden, like it happened in October 1944 in Belgium, where all the bank accounts were frozen, right, to control the hyperinflation. Those things do happen, and they often actually change happens slowly, and then it happens suddenly. And I think now we see actually right now in Turkey as we speak, like a big rise in people buying Bitcoin because of the inflation. And so I think it's better to be prepared. And if you've already been for the past 6 months giving like 10 euros a month to actually start accumulating, at least you will have given yourself a reason to pay more attention and learn more about it. And voila. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for contributing as well. I also learned a lot. So thank you for sharing your perspective. And then yeah, maybe I'll see you during the People Assembly and or at any other calls that we might be doing another time.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a great
Thank you,
night.
Xavier. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.